to know about the spiritual meaning of a walrus? I took notes. So, the spiritual meaning of the walrus. What made me want to do this video is I heard the song in my head, I Am the Walrus by the Beatles. And immediately I was just like, okay, that's one that I need to do. And so then I looked up the lyrics to that song and did not understand what it meant at all. But it does lead me to telling y'all about what it means spiritually. So I learned that walruses are gentle giants. They never attack first. They're more of like a follower kind of animal, more compliant. But they're big, right? They're very like big and look like they would be aggressive, but they're actually not. They're very like sweet, calm animals. And they like to just chill, right? Like sit up on the rock in the sun with the water around and stuff. So they also don't really like change. So they like to stay stagnant. So if you were to see a walrus, that could mean that you are struggling with being stagnant or struggling with staying, in one place for too long. So I also saw that there is a Celtic myth about a walrus, and this myth is that the walrus can turn into a human, like it can shed its skin and then turn into a human and go do human stuff, right? So the story goes that the walrus gets off the rock, sheds its skin, turns into a woman, meets a man on the beach, they get married, right? They fall in love, get married. But then the woman is craving the sea again, right? Like craving what she knew. So she goes back to the water, turns back into a walrus. Then the husband goes onto the beach to, shoot walruses for like play or whatever, and then he ends up shooting his wife. So that's just like a quick little story, and I was kind of like, that's sad, and I really wasn't sure what the message was for that. Like I don't know, take it how you want to take it, right? I guess it's like sometimes maybe staying in one place too long or in one form of yourself too long is like just accepting that that's where you want to be at, right? So I think that the walrus also represents soul searching for what's really important to you. And so also walruses are like very powerful, caring animals, and that the idea is they kind of gave it, when I was doing the research, it's like they gave it a human, kind of like a human representation, right? Of like, they're better to others than others are to them, right? So it's like if you're seeing a walrus, it could also be a representation of like, you need to be aware of who's around you, and like, are you over giving too much, or are you just being like the gentle giant while people are using you, right? So it could mean that you need to adapt, find a different way to do things, free yourself, be open to change, and then being open to stepping outside of the box, right? Growing outside of the box. Yeah. What else do I have here? Okay. It can also represent deep emotions inside that may be stuck down, right? So, like, the idea of soul searching, like being okay with something because you're not really digging down for what you really, really want out of your life. That was something that I also was pulling from that, like, feeling like this is just the best it's gonna get, right? So what can I do? Like, let me just do what I can do right where I'm at, you know, to be comfortable. But then there's that little bit inside of you that's like, but really what would make me the happiest would be to do this, right? And we deal with that every day. Like the things, I feel like life is set up that way where we kind of compromise our truest desires all the time, honestly. So there's something with that as well. I also learned that they have stability in their hooves. So not, I wrote down hooves, but I meant hooves. That's interesting. What has hooves? Horses? Yeah, horses has hooves. I meant to say they're long teeth, right? So they have stability in their like long teeth. It keeps them stable. So what that kind of represented to me is that you may, if you're seeing, I'm hoping that when people see these videos, they've either seen a walrus already or they just need the message of the walrus, right? So if you see it, or what I mean is, stability is kind of like second nature to walruses, right? Like it's like not they're comfortable being stable, but when I saw it's like the stability is in their teeth, it's almost like they don't really have to worry. Anywhere they go, they're stable, you know? Like we can trip ourselves out thinking that we won't be able to find stability outside of a situation, right? But it's like the stability is already grounded in who you are, you know? So I thought that was interesting. And then I also wrote down that it may have to do with vigilance, being aware of the situation that you're in, right? Like kind of like don't slip too comfortably into it, right? Where you're just end up kind of sinking away, you know, like there's something of vigilance there. Like be aware, you know, of what's happening, to make sure that you're not just letting things pass by, right? Letting your life pass by in a way. Also, knowing that you aren't trapped. If you feel trapped, knowing that you're not, and that you can say no. Like at any time you can say no to anything that you don't really feel comfortable with, you know? And people around you may not like that, but that's not your problem. Like it's like whatever you need to say no to is your prerogative to say no, right? So there's something with that as well. It was also interesting because I like to watch cartoons, you know, at night, fall asleep to them. And I was watching Foster's Home of Imaginary Friends. And in one of the episodes, it's like when I woke up just in the middle of the night, what was playing was the episode where one of the characters has a really hard time saying no. Like he just is comfortable just being a nice guy and helping people. And so his friends order him around, get me some popcorn, you know, go do this, go do that, iron my, like when I woke up, he's like ironing somebody else's shirt. And his friend's like, you know, do you want to do this? Or like kind of like egging him on, like, why do you always say yes? And he's like, you know, I just have a hard time saying, and he like wouldn't even say no. His friend had to say no for him every time, right? And so anyways, it keeps on building up inside of him, building, and eventually he just goes off and he's like, no, right? And like just has a whole breakdown. And you know, they're like, okay, like, do you feel better now? He's like, yeah, I do. I think I do feel better now. And then they're like, okay, great, get me some popcorn. He just says, okay. And then when he realizes, he says, okay, and he gets ready to say, actually, no. And then they slam the door in his face, you know? And like, it's like, I don't know. It's that thing of like, if people are used to you being that way, they just feel comfortable treating you that way. And they're likely to continue to, you know what I mean? So that's also what goes with the vigilance. of like, be aware of that. Be aware of people that treat you that way, you know, and know that even though the feeling, like the discomfort of change is hard, but it's worth it, you know, it is worth it. It is worth it. So those are the notes that I have. It's just a quick one, but notice if you see walruses. I know it's kind of like, where do we see walruses? But also look on, you know, television. Like, do you see a picture of one? Are you flipping through the television and you happen to see a documentary about them, right? Or something like in a cartoon or something along those lines, right? Like, just notice where you may see them, because it's not like we may see them just every day, right? Yeah, so just keep a lookout for walruses, and thanks for watching. Okay, see you in the next one.